Homework. The first 35 days of our homework are the building blocks. There are fundamentals of our shooting skills and our ability to safely handle the firearm. We need to do this practice slowly and thoughtfully. Think about all the steps that are going on and ensure that we're doing them properly from day one all the way through. The way that this homework works is that we're doing progressive overload just like a gym workout. We want to ensure that we're hitting every single day consistently, and if we do miss a day, I have a makeup day inside of our homework that we can plug that missed day into, so we ensure that we're staying on track and we're not falling too far behind. Even though we've built out what to do on the days, you're going to need to plug in some of your values depending on where you are at in your skill set. For instance, if your skills are improving rapidly, you might need to shrink your target sizes to increase that progressive overload and ensure that your accuracy is progressing along with your speed. Conversely, if you're struggling, try to increase the target size or increase the time allotted to be able to maintain your proper fundamentals in sight picture. If you're running a double/single action trigger, make sure that throughout the homework, when we're running from the draw, that first trigger press is going to be in our double action mode. But remember, in live fire, the majority of our trigger presses are going to be single action. As nice as it is to run through a rhythm drill with a double action trigger and getting those trigger breaks, it's not a realistic application to the live fire version because that's going to be in single action. So just keep that in mind. We also want to make sure that we're not jumping ahead in the building blocks and that we're focusing on that day. If you want to do more work, do more of that work in that day. Don't jump ahead to the next day. This may seem painfully slow, especially if you have experience with firearms, but what we're trying to do here is hit the reset button and isolate very, very specific skills and spend time on those skills alone before moving on. It should also be noted that the homework goes along with the course. If you're having issues with sight alignment or grip, you should look to the module and lesson which applies to get more info and some assistance. As we're going through these days, we need to ensure that we're keeping those principles of dry fire with us. Commitment and honesty are the keys to success. If we're not honest with our sight pictures and what we're actually achieving in our dry fire session, we're not going to have progress. And if we're not committing daily, we're also going to be stagnant and we're actually going to decline in our skill set instead of improving. Day one, oomph, UMFF, unload, muzzle, finger, foreground. Learn your firearm safety rules, memorize them, have them in your brain so this is an integral part of your firearms journey going forward. They need to be memorized. Day two, we're going through prove and practicing proving our firearm safe, going through the whole acronym from start to finish, PROVE. Point the firearm in a safe direction. R, remove the source of ammunition. O, observe the chamber. V, verify the feeding path. And E, examining the bore. Do that perfectly without fail 10 times. Remember, we are taking that dog dish away to ensure there's no more food going in the mouth, and then we're going to check that mouth to ensure there's no food being eaten. Day three, we're going to continue on with our acronym. We're going to prove our firearm safe 5 times, and then we're going to do 10 reps of a load followed by an unload. Looks like this. P, point the firearm in a safe direction. R, remove the source of ammunition. Observe the chamber, verify the feeding path, examine the bore. Notice, remember, I'm doing that with my support hand, pulling the gun towards and looking down the bore. My firing hand is off the gun. Then I can load. Magazine goes in, push the slide forward, it's loaded. Then I'm going to practice a safe unload. Source of ammunition first. Pull the slide to the rear and lock. Observe the chamber, verify the feeding path, examine the bore. Do that load and unload process 10 times. Day number 4 is obtaining our first and final grip. You can either do that from a holster or you can do that from a table. If it's a table, make sure we lift it up a tad bit with our support hand and come in getting a high tang grip with our firing hand and obtain that first and final grip. Place your support hand in that puzzle piece location and ensure that your grip is proper. What we're looking for here is obtaining that first and final grip in a consistent manner because consistency breeds accuracy. We want to ensure that our hand is landing in the same spot every time and that our puzzle piece is fitting in that spot exactly the same every time. If you're doing this from a holster, ensure that your first and final grip is indeed your first and final grip. As soon as your hand touches that firearm, that's the last grip you get on it. Draw it from your holster and then put that puzzle piece support hand on there and ensure that everything is aligning properly. Day number 5, we're going to start playing with our trigger. Draw out or pick it up from the table, get in our first and final grip. Do not obtain a sight picture. We're actually going to turn our gun in a safe direction and look at the trigger itself. We're then going to put our finger on the trigger and we're going to do a couple trigger breaks here, just watching the trigger move slowly to the rear and observing the break. Do this 10 times, observing the break and going as slow as possible. Watch the trigger creep and break. Once you've felt that break, we're then going to try to get to that 90% point, which looks like this. And then back off. We're going to do that 10 times, looking at the trigger, finding that 90% point, and then backing off. Finger back on, go to 90, back off. If you push too hard and you push past that 90% into the trigger brake, that's okay. Now you know how close that is, and you want to try to get as close as possible to that trigger brake without breaking the shot. Day number 6, we're going to keep playing with that trigger and getting our first and final grip. So we're going to do 10 reps of first and final grip, and once we have that first and final grip, again, we're going to turn the gun facing us, and we're going to do 10 more, finding the 90. Once we've done that, we're starting some serious dry fire now. We're going to put up our patch drill target, and we're going to obtain a sight picture and a 90% trigger press on each square going through. Now on our first patch, we're going to obtain a sight picture and do a 90% trigger press. And then come back, go down to the next patch, obtain a sight picture, and 90% trigger press. Come back off, go all the way down through 25 of those dots, and you've completed the day. Day number 7, we're going to break the trigger. Getting our first and final grip off the table or the draw, we're going to get a sight alignment on one of the patches. We're going to find the 90, and then we're going to push through and break the trigger. Once that happens, come back, reset your gun, go to the second patch, obtain a sight picture, find the 90, and then press through slowly into the last piece of the trigger. Reset and go through all 25 patches. Now that we are breaking the trigger, we want to ensure that the gun is not moving at all, zero movement as the trigger breaks. So when we find that 90, what we don't want to see is this. My sight picture there would have moved as the trigger was breaking, and I would have missed that shot. What we do want to see is finding the 90, keeping that sight picture all the way through the trigger brake like this. If you are seeing your sight picture move on the trigger brake, we need to spend more time on the trigger, turning the gun towards us, looking at the trigger, and spending time on that trigger brake now. Take it to the 90, slow, smooth press through the trigger brake. The gun shouldn't move. One classic technique to use to ensure your sight picture is not moving on the trigger brake is to put a small item like a penny, casing, or snap cap on your front sight blade, balancing there, obtain your grip, and then execute a good trigger press without that falling off. Also, if you feel like ruining your walls, you can tape some paper up there, put a pencil or pen down your barrel, push the gun up against the paper with the pen tip touching the paper, and then press the trigger. The theory behind this is that you should have just the dot left behind on the paper from the pen, and if you have a dash or line, that means you're jerking the gun around on the trigger brake. You can also shoot torpedoes. Remember, hold the gun firm to counteract the trigger press. All we're trying to accomplish is to keep our sight picture as the trigger breaks. Do that 25 times and you're done the day. Day number 8 is a makeup day. Good for you. Day number 9, we're going to start doing some draws from the holster, attempting to get our natural point of aim and good sight alignment, sight picture from the draw. We can use the B8 target or the patch drill. We're going to draw out, looking at the center of that B8 target and trying to put our sight picture directly on the X. If we find that we're off to the left or off to the right, we want to make a macro or big adjustment to our stance and see where that moves our gun on target. Once we get closer and closer to that X, we can then start making some micro adjustments, maybe to our grip or to our actual presentation of the pistol, to ensure that we're landing as close to that X as possible. You can also try to do the eyes closed drill, where we look at the B8, close our eyes, draw out, thinking that I'm on the X, open my eyes, and see where your sights are. If they're pretty far off, make an adjustment, repeat until you're getting closer and closer to that X. Do that 20 times, adjust, and try to find your natural point of aim. Day number 10, we're going to work on some natural point of aim and pointing again from the holster. On the patch drill target right here, we're going to go through all 25 of these patches, picking one, drawing to it, obtaining your sight picture on it, and then reholstering. Obtain your first and final grip, draw out to the second patch, obtain a sight picture, and reholster. Do it as slow as necessary to obtain a perfect sight picture, and then reholster. Ensure that as we obtain that sight picture, our grip isn't messed up, we've got a good first and final grip, and the puzzle piece is fitting together. If you're noticing issues with that as you're drawing, you need to slow down and perfect that grip on the way out from the holster. Day 11. We're going to do the same thing as day 10, but we're going to do a trigger break on each of the patches. So drawing out on each of those patches 25 times from the holster, getting that perfect sight picture, and then bringing the trigger to 90 and doing a trigger break. Day number 12, we're going to carry on with our patch drill, 25 draws and trigger presses all the way through. But what we want to do, if we were at 3 meters on the day beforehand, let's push it to 4 meters. We want to start making that target area smaller and smaller to ensure that we can see any movement with the gun and that our sight picture is staying on that patch throughout the trigger press. Taking to 90, small movement, break. Reset 25 times. Day 13, we're now going to move our patch drill to 5 meters, or the furthest possible space you can get, to make sure that's a very small preferred target area and we're maintaining our sight picture and trigger break through it. Do that 25 times through, getting our first and final grip, perfect sight picture, 90% trigger press, squeezing through, very smooth and slow trigger break. We're going to reset and do that 25 times, ensuring that we're staying thoughtful on our trigger and maintaining our grip and sight alignment through the trigger break. It's very important for accuracy to have a perfect trigger break and perfect sight picture, and it's something that's going to be necessary throughout the course to be able to land precision hits before we start speeding up. Day 14, we're going to keep that bread and butter of the trigger press and do 10 reps of that. We want to ensure that as we're moving through and adding other skills to the building blocks, that we're maintaining the bread and butter of shooting, which is a good, accurate trigger press while maintaining our sight picture. Today we're going to do some reloads. So all we're doing with this is dividing it into 2 steps. We're first going to be up on target with nothing in our magazine well and our slide forward. When we make the decision to reload, we're going to move slowly down and get a good, accurate purchase on our magazine and move it up to the magazine well. Remember, indexing on the tip of the bullet and touching. Once we get to this point, we're just going to put our magazine back in the pouch. We're going to do this 10 times, bringing it up to the magazine well and making sure they index properly, and we're moving our hand into that point where we can marry them together. Once we do that 10 times, we're then going to repeat phase 1, pausing at the magazine well, and then pushing into phase 2, inserting the magazine and reobtaining our grip and sight picture. Put the magazine back in your pouch and go through phase 1 and phase 2 10 times. Accessing magazine, bringing it up, pausing, inserting, reobtaining grip. Do that 10 times in phase 1 and 10 times with phase 1 into phase 2. Day 15, we're going to maintain our 10 trigger presses on target, and we're going to be adding slide lock reloads. To do the slide lock reloads, we're going to access our firearm with a proper first and final grip, lock the slide to the rear, and then access our magazine. It does help if we have some snap caps or something pushing the follower down to ensure that as we insert the mag and release the slide lock, there's not added pressure on that slide lock lever that we have to overcome. If you're running snap caps, we're doing the same thing as the previous day. We're doing 10 of phase 1 into phase 2, reobtaining our grip and actuating our slide lock lever on the way down, which looks like this. Phase 1 into phase 2 and back up on target. Phase 2, we're really focusing on getting that grip back properly, pushing our hand up and reforming that puzzle piece and sight picture. We're going to do that 20 times in total, 10 phase 1 and 10 phase 1 into phase 2. 16 is your makeup day. Congratulations, you made it again. Plug in something that you're struggling on into this day, because tomorrow we're going into live fire. Day 17 is our first live fire day. It's very important that we make every pull of that trigger a learning experience for us. Once we feel how the gun operates in live fire, we can really apply all of that data to our dry fire and ensure that we can tweak our techniques if necessary. Go take a look at the first live fire video for more info. Day number 18, we're starting rhythm. What we're going to use is the metrics target here, and we're going to use the Alpha box, Bravo box, India box, and Juliet box. Starting off, we're going to draw with a good first and final grip into Alpha, and we're going to do the rhythm with 3 syllables. So I'm just going to say trigger press, and I'm going to go trigger press 1, trigger press 2, trigger press 3, trigger press 4, trigger press 5. That's 1 rep. I'm going to do 10 of those reps in the Alpha box, and then I'm going to move down into the Bravo box to do a 2-syllable word, which would be trigger. And then I'm going to move back up, I'm going to reset my trigger. Keep in mind that once we get our first trigger break, we want to simulate our next trigger breaks, moving up just to the wall of the trigger, which is about right here. So when it's actually broken, I'm going to simulate that it's not broken, and I'm going to move up to where the wall is and push through with the same simulated amount of force. The last box, Juliet, I'm going to do with no gap in between the numbers. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to ensure that my sight picture remains inside the Juliet box as I am doing this. Day 19, we're continuing on rhythm. We're going to use the Alpha, Bravo, India, and Juliet boxes again, but we're going to mix up the strings of fire. So on Alpha, we're going to do 6-shot strings. On Bravo, we're going to do 4-shot strings. On India, we're going to do 3-shot strings, and we're going to end on double taps on Juliet. These rhythm drills is where it's beneficial to keep your firearm slide out of battery, so you have a little bit of resistance in your trigger to play with. If you're not going to do that, just ensure that you're simulating the trigger break accurately, meaning that I'm going to move back to where the wall would be and then push through with that simulated force onto the trigger for my subsequent pulls. Day 20, we're going to start speeding up the draw using par timers. We're also going to use the A-Zone IPSC target or A-Zone USPSA target that we can print off and put those at least 3 meters if possible. If you can get more distance to that standard 7-yard distance, that's what we want to use for these. Now we're going to use a par timer starting at 4 seconds. And what we want to do is have the first beep be our start of the draw, moving smoothly through to the end of the draw, and the second beep is going to be when we pull the trigger, which would look something like this. So what I'm doing there is I'm using the full par time. When the first beep goes, I'm getting a good first and final grip. I'm drawing out, going through my whole draw stroke smoothly, prepping my trigger to 90%, looking at my sight picture, and as soon as that second beep goes, I'm pulling the trigger quickly through that last 10%. We're going to do 10 reps of 4 seconds, 10 reps of 3 seconds, and then finish off with 10 reps of 2 seconds. If you're not able to make that 2-second par timer, don't worry about it. We're going to build up to that level. Remember, don't speed up at the expense of a good first and final grip or a poor sight picture. We're not pressing that trigger on the beep if our sight picture is not on there. Ensure that we are honest with ourselves in this dry fire, that we have our sight picture and our trigger is prepped on that beep. For instance, if you're not hitting it at the 3-second par timer, don't move down to 2.5 or 2 seconds. We're going to maintain that 3 seconds until we're sitting there waiting for the beep. Day 21, we're still working on speeding up that draw, but also refining our sight picture on smaller targets. So we're going to use the patch drill and go through that same drill starting at 4-second par timers, moving through the columns, down to 3-second par timer and ending on 2 seconds. If the 2-second par timer is pushing you to a point where you're getting a bad first and final grip, a poor sight picture, or poor trigger press, push it back to a 3-second par timer or a 4-second par timer so that all your fundamentals are staying perfect through these reps. We are trying to speed up now at this point. However, we still want to ensure that we're building it on a firm foundation. Day 22, we're working on quick trigger pulls. So we're going to start with our firearm out of the holster with a perfect sight picture and our finger inside the trigger guard but off of the trigger. What we're going to do is set a par timer for 0.5 if possible. And all we're going to do is as soon as that first beep happens, we're going to pull the trigger straight to the rear, try not to affect our sight picture downrange. What this is going to work on is ensuring that our grip is proper on the firearm and is firm enough that we're not pushing the sights off target when we do a quick trigger pull. I'm going to show you what this looks like with one hand so you can see the trigger, but you should be doing this drill with a proper grip. Now we're going to run a 0.5 par timer. So the first beep is going to tell us to start moving our finger and pressing the trigger to the rear, and we should have the trigger break completed before the second beep. The same concept applies with this as well. Once we've done 10 reps of a 0.5 par, we're going to try to drop it down until we can get to that magical 0.2, meaning that we're breaking the trigger basically before the beep is even completed. Now that's the gold standard. If we can't hit that without moving the sights to a large degree, then we'd want to back off until we get those smooth trigger presses quickly. Day 23, we're continuing to speed up the draw. And now, instead of prepping the trigger at the end of the draw stroke, we're doing it during the draw stroke. So our trigger is prepped to 90 at the end of our presentation, and we can break the shot when our sights are aligned on target. There's an extra element of risk to this technique, so we have to be sure that we are training it properly, keeping our universal firearm safety rules at the forefront of our mind, and applying this technique to the context it deserves. With that said, if the decision to fire has been made and our muzzle's pointed in a safe direction during the draw stroke, this is going to seriously improve our accuracy and speed at getting that first round down range. We're going to use our same A-Zone target and 3-second par time. The same rules apply. The first beep is when we get our first and final grip and start moving out of the holster. But now, as soon as our gun gets level and we're starting to marry up with our support hand, I'm prepping the trigger to 90% as I acquire my sight picture. At the full presentation, I'm waiting here at 90% for my second beep, and I'm going to break the shot. What we need to be very cognizant about during this technique is ensuring that our finger does not touch the trigger when our gun is still facing down at the ground. We need to ensure that it is level in a safe direction, and then we can start placing our finger on the trigger. In slow motion, it would look like this. We need to be very sure when we are doing this technique that we are not breaking the trigger during the draw stroke, like so. We need to ensure that our sight picture is obtained and we're waiting for that beep so we don't get into a bad practice of pulling that trigger negligently. Day 24 is another makeup day. Congratulations, you made it. You did it again. Plug in something that you are struggling at, or do some push-ups, sit on the couch, eat some Cheetos, take the day off. Day 25, we're going to start working on transitions. Now, what we want to start working on here is a 1, 1, 1, 1, and 2, 2, 2, 2. So we're going left to right and then right to left. We're going to do 10 reps left, 10 reps right, and then we're going to do 10 reps left in the double taps, 10 reps right in the double taps. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Day 26, we're doing transitions from large to small and small to large. So we're going to use the metrics target, going from the large target to the small target on the other side, and then the small target on the other side to one of the large targets. You can mix them up, but make sure you're going from large to small and small to large, left to right, right to left. Day 27, we're working on speeding up our reloads. We can still break these down into the 2 phases, but we want to do both those phases quicker and quicker. So we're going to use that de-escalating ladder of speed. We're going to start at a 3-second par timer, 2.5, and then 2-second par timer. A quick reload is simply just moving our hands fast. So what we want to ensure is when we're practicing this, that we're moving through that dead space with urgency. Quick to the magazine pouch and quick back up to the gun. Day 28 is the 3R3. It's a rhythm drill, a reload drill, and a transition drill. We're using the metrics target, and we're going to go from the alpha down to the Juliet, and the Juliet back up to the alpha. Same thing for this, we're going to use that decreasing par timer. We're going to start at 6 seconds, and we're going to go through the drill. It looks like this. Draw out, 1, 2, 3, into the reload, down to Juliet, 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to go from Juliet back up to alpha. We're going to do this 20 times. Our eyes are doing a couple different things during this drill. We do want to transition our eyeballs down to the Juliet, but in the interim, we're also needing to look at our mag well for a split second to ensure that we get that magazine in the gun. Once we get the mag in the gun, our eyeballs no longer need to be on the gun. They need to transition to Juliet so we can get our sight picture prepped on it. Day 29, we're doing one-handed shooting. We're going to start with our strong hand, and we're going to go through draws and the patch drill. So we're going to draw out and we're going to do a trigger press on each patch, 25 trigger presses, strong hand only. Making sure that we have that still same perfect sight picture and we're pulling the trigger to the rear without disturbing that sight picture with our strong hand only. Back to the holster, come back out 25 times. Day 30, we're switching sides. We're going to use our weak or support hand and go through the same thing, the patch drill, all 25 trigger presses from the draw. Now our gun's normally on our strong side, so we're going to have to use our transitions that we learned in the previous lesson to get the gun into our support hand, which looks like this. Reset back to the holster, and moving down 25 times. Day 31, we're working on the El Presidente drill with no turn. So we're going to set up on the wall, facing the wall with our 3 A-zone targets, or our 3 6-scale IPSC targets, obviously aiming for that preferred target zone of the A zone. And we're going to run 2 hits on each target, reload, and then come back down. So it's 12 rounds. So what it looks like is this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, reload, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Day 32 is a makeup day. I'm so proud of you. Day 33, we're going to do a modified box drill or X drill on the metrics target. We're going to put 2 rounds in alpha, 2 rounds in Juliet, 1 round in echo, and then 1 round in foxtrot. We're going to do 10 reps in that direction, and then we're going to reverse the order and go foxtrot, echo, Juliet, alpha for the last 10 reps. 20 reps in total from the draw. Day 34, we're doing the whole metrics test 10 times. This is 7 stages. Read the instructions. We're going to go through the whole thing in dry fire to prepare for day 35, where we're going to run this drill in live fire for our first time. Day 35, we're doing our live fire metrics test. Hopefully we're getting underneath 30 seconds here to pass this thing, and we'll be moving on from the building blocks section into sharpening the blade. Now just focus on getting the hits. If we've done the practice through this program, the speed will be there and we'll be able to pass this thing. We just got to focus on the accuracy and getting the hits. Good luck, guys. Day 36 and forward is where we're getting into the real dry fire workouts. These are going to vary every day as we're sharpening the blade and progressing our fundamentals. It really is about brilliance in the basics. As we talked about earlier, these days are going to progress similar to a regular gym routine where we're doing a push-pull legs with a full body workout mixed in here or there. We're maintaining the fundamentals while progressing our skill set further with varying tasks. Remember, throughout these workouts, if you're seeing that the difficulty isn't scaling to where you are at, make sure that you change the par times or target size so that you're always pushing that progressive overload. There is a benefit to going dumb slow and stupid fast from time to time, but just make sure that the majority of our work, regardless of the time, is progressing us forward inch by inch. And that's it, guys. Think first and prepare.